Hello everyone, and welcome back to another album deep dive. My name is Davis Morgan, and I do in-depth analysis on albums that I really love. I go through every lyric of every song in the album and give my take on what the writer's trying to say. Of course, my analysis is by no means definitive. I make these videos because I think that the artistry on display in the lyrics of my favorite music can often be overlooked. Think of this video as kind of a literary analysis of an album rather than a look at the music. I'm sure there are a bunch of great videos about Death Cab's music that you can watch if you want to. Plans is an album that is pretty special to me. I grew up with 3 older brothers, and we all shared an iPod up until I was in middle school. This meant that we all listened to the same music growing up, so I grew up on the Beatles, Michael Jackson, and Weird Al, kind of an odd mix. But when I got into middle school and I got my own iPod and eventually my own iPhone, I started using Pandora, like the Pandora music app, to discover more music. This was before Spotify and Apple Music and just music streaming in general, so finding music meant you were listening to a station on Pandora with only a limited number of skips that you could use. They just kind of forced you to find new music, which was actually really awesome, and I kind of miss that sometimes. The first song by Death Cab that really caught my attention was I Will Follow You Into the Dark, which is probably how a lot of people got introduced to them. It gave me such good sad boy vibes, and then after that I just kind of quickly listened to the entire album and it became one of my favorites. Despite how amazing this album is, it's actually not my personal favorite Death Cab album. That honor goes to Transatlanticism, followed closely by Asphalt Meadows, the most recent album. But now let's break down every single song in Death Cab for Cutie's Plans. But before that, if you haven't done so already, then please subscribe. It really does help out this channel, and I still get really stoked every time I get a new subscriber. This is a small channel, and these videos take a lot of work to make. I really do love this music, and I wouldn't be making these videos if I didn't love making this kind of content and exploring this kind of stuff. But being able to do this like full time and make money off of it someday would be the absolute dream, so every sub does count. But anyways, enough stalling, let's get into it. Track 1, Marching Bands of Manhattan. This is how you start an album. The lo-fi synth that starts this track is so iconic, and it's a great way to welcome the listener into the sound of Death Cab for Cutie. This song is also great because it manages to ride that line between optimism and despair. This is a theme that shows up so much in the music of Death Cab for Cutie. If I could open my arms and span the length of the Isle of Manhattan, I'd bring it to where you are, making a lake of the East River and Hudson. So our first image here is one of someone wishing to take all of Manhattan and bring it to someone else. This reads like a love song to me. Perhaps the writer is someone who lives in Manhattan and wants to be with their lover, but can't bear to leave the city behind. That would make sense as to why he would want to bring the island to them. It's a grand gesture, but one that may suggest that our writer is truly caught between his two loves. The effect that New York has on people can be somewhat magical. I have never been, but I know people who live there and swear by it. I can imagine it would be hard to leave. This action of displacing Manhattan would also make a lake of both the East River and the Hudson River, since they are separated by that island. I also find the idea of making a lake to be somewhat of a callback to one of Death Cab's best songs, Transatlanticism. That song used the metaphor of the earth flooding to represent being isolated from someone. Perhaps this idea of leaving a lake behind hints that our writer feels that leaving the city would hurt the people closest to him there. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but that's where my mind always goes when I listen to this song. If I could open my mouth wide enough for a marching band to march out, they would make your name sing and bend through alleys and bounce off all the buildings. These lines read like the writer is saying that he wishes he could fully express the emotions that he has for his lover. Perhaps he feels that the words he is saying to her aren't enough, and he wishes that his simple gesture would turn to a much more grand one. He must have some real love and adoration for her, wanting her name to be sung all around and for everyone to hear it. In reality, these grand gestures can be nice, but sometimes the simple, sincere reassurance of one's love to someone else is more impactful than anything else. This could also be a bit of a fourth wall break. Death Cab is writing this song that is beautiful, but not nearly as large as something that a marching band would play. Maybe the writer feels that his own music is insufficient and is insecure about the offering that he is giving to his lover. He shouldn't be insecure about it, however. This song is pretty much perfect. I wish we could open our eyes to see in all directions at the same time. This is an interesting sentiment that seems to me that the writer is worried that they are missing out on sights and experiences. They want to be able to see everything all at once and are potentially worried that they are too blinded to really see how the world is. This could be a reference to the tunnel vision that so many get in life. I live in a particularly beautiful area of Washington, but sometimes I worry that I don't take enough time to appreciate the sights around me. Sometimes I'm too focused on going somewhere or doing something that I forget to appreciate the world around me and the nature and the beauty. Perhaps our writer is so in love with his lover that he feels that he is getting tunnel vision. He worries that he might be spending too much of his focus on her, but knows that he can't afford to take his eye off of her. In this way, he wishes he could see in all directions at the same time. Oh, what a beautiful view if you were never aware of what was around you. These lines can be taken in one of two ways. The first is similar to what we covered before, that if you weren't worried about your immediate surroundings and responsibility, then you could enjoy the sights and sounds of the world a lot more. The more sinister way to look at these lines is that what is around you isn't all that great. Perhaps our writer is in love with the idea of wanting to see the world, but knows that the world isn't always a nice place. He would only want to see around him for some other reason. Perhaps he's paranoid and wants to be able to watch his back. And it is true what you said, that I live like a hermit in my own head. These lines speak to me so much. I am definitely someone who lives inside my own head. I'm constantly thinking of a video or a song or coming up with lyrics to my own music. It can be very exhausting and sometimes frustrating to those around me who want to know what is going on inside my head. My wife will often pick my brain and try to understand my thought processes. It's really interesting trying to explain how I think to someone else because it's just so familiar to me. It's good to express how you think to others though, because it lets you find the faults in your own mental thought processes. But anyways, our writer has been told by his lover that he spends too much time in his own head. Maybe this is another look at the paranoia that our writer seems to have. Maybe he is nervous about if his feelings are reciprocated, and his lover has said that he spends too much time thinking about that and should just go with the flow. But when the sun shines again, I'll pull the curtains and blinds to let the light in. These lines are deceptively complex. At first it seems that our writer is saying that things might be a little dark in his head, but as soon as things clear up, he'll be in a better spot. But we have to think about the fact that he is currently in a place where he has the curtains and blinds closed. Maybe this darkness is something that he is putting himself in. This is common in people like myself who struggle with depression sometimes. I'm not saying that people who wrote this song struggle with it, but the metaphor holds true either way. Sometimes it is easier to think that some external force will come and pull you out of your sadness, when that is often something that you have to do for yourself. Maybe the sun is currently shining, but our writer is just unable to see it, given he has the curtains closed. My guess is that this line is meant to suggest that waiting for your perfect sunny day is oftentimes a lot more difficult than simply opening your mind and trying to find the light around you. Sorrow drips into your heart through a pinhole, just like a faucet that leaks, and there is comfort in the sound. Now we are back to our typical emo death cab lyrics that we all know and love so much. This sorrow is something that slowly infects the heart of our writer. He knows that he is slowly sinking into despair, but there is also something comforting about it. I am personally guilty of trying to hold on to negative feelings because I feel that I am more creatively fulfilled when I am sad. There's just so much creative energy in sadness, and it's okay to be sad for a while, but you have to pull yourself out of it. Songwriting and other creative pursuits can be a great way to bottle those emotions and work through them, but you shouldn't dwell on them. But while you debate half empty or half full, it slowly rises, your love is gonna drown. The glass half full debate is a classic example of optimism versus pessimism. If you see the glass as half empty, then you might have a more pessimistic view of the world. If you see it as half full, then you might view the world with more optimism. The reality that our writer is presenting, however, is that it doesn't matter whether it is half empty or half full. The glass still has the same amount of water. Spending this time worrying about semantics just gives your heart more time to sink into despair. Beyond the inner turmoil, this could also be a look at a failing relationship. Maybe things aren't going so well, and instead of trying to convince yourself or your partner that things aren't as bad as they seem, your time would be better spent trying to fix the relationship before it sinks. I think either interpretation is fine, and I'm sure there are others that I am missing. I intentionally make these videos without reading other interpretations of the lyrics because I want my analysis to be unaffected by what others think. If you have different thoughts, then please put them in the comments below. And that does it for Marching Bands of Manhattan. I really love this song, and it's one that instantly brings me back to high school. I think it is a great way to start the album, and I love the extended outro. It builds up a ton of suspense before hitting you with a single piano note. I just always love when songs do that, it's super cool. Track 2, Soul Meets Body. Our next song is another one that cements Death Cab's love for cryptic allegories. This song is much more upbeat than the last one, but like many of their songs, the upbeat nature betrays the true meaning of the lyrics. That is something that Death Cab does really well. I was once talking with a friend about which Death Cab songs are actually happy, and they suggested No Sunlight. Now, if you know that song, then you know that it is definitely one of their most upbeat songs, but it is by no means happy. There's often just this disconnect between the lyrics and the music of their songs. It's really cool, really well done, and again, just a staple of Death Cab for Cutie that I love so much. I want to live where soul meets body. This desire seems to be one of total cohesion between mind, body, and spirit. This is a more esoteric aspiration that is common in more Eastern philosophies. Our singer wants to reach a point where his mind is in harmony with his actions. This builds on the inner despair that we talked about on the previous song. Our singer wants to be free of that despair and turmoil that we talked about before. And let the sun wrap its arms around me and bathe my skin in water cool and cleansing. Our singer has a desire to let the light in. Again, this is similar to what we talked about on the previous song. He feels that he is living in darkness and wants positive emotions to bring the light into his life. He also equates this desire for wholeness to taking a bath in cool water. The idea of water being cool and cleansing is interesting to me because most people tend to want to take warm baths. Sometimes the hot water doesn't work at my apartment, and I'm definitely not happy when that happens. Maybe this is to tie into the idea of the mind and body being connected. The cold thoughts of his mind make him desire a similarly cool water to bathe in. And feel what it's like to be new. This entire song is about rejecting the idea that the mind and body are separate entities. This was actually a philosophy that evolved during the Industrial Revolution. As people started to pollute the earth and themselves with new man-made substances, they took comfort in the idea that the body was separate from the mind. They were only destroying the body and not what they perceived to be the most important aspect of the human experience. Our singer's desire to be a new person is a rejection of this ideal. Those who believe that the two entities are wholly separate would believe that the idea of having a complete transformation is impossible given the limits of your physical body. The idea presented in this song is that by changing your mind, you can also change your body and become a new entity entirely. Because in my head, there's a Greyhound station where I send my thoughts to far-off destinations. Greyhound stations are bus stations here in the US. I don't know if other countries use them, but in the US they are seen as somewhat antiquated due to the prevalence of cars as the primary method of travel here. Their use in this song is just a metaphor for our singer daydreaming and spacing out. He sees his mind as a place where he can dive into the fantasies and bury in those thoughts. Ben Gibbard, the lead singer behind Death Cab, is a highly creative person, and I can imagine that these lyrics about living in your own head are very true to the way that he thinks. These lines might also refute the notion that he lives like a hermit in his own head, as we talked about in the previous song. Hermits stay inside, while the thoughts of the singer travel into far-off destinations. So they may have a chance of finding a place where they're far more suited than here. Perhaps these thoughts are ones that the singer doesn't want in his head. Maybe he is using this Greyhound station to send away the negative thoughts that plague his mind. It is interesting that the idea of a wandering mind is used to describe a mind that ships undesired thoughts away. I personally never thought of it like that before. It's just a cool metaphor that I've never really, kind of thought about in my own personal mind, so that's cool. And I cannot guess what we'll discover when we turn the dirt with our palms cupped like shovels. These lines are used as a metaphor to describe the idea of delving into someone's past. Perhaps our singer and his lover are going to dredge up incidents from the past in order to get everything out in the open. This process is described as a dirty one, using their own hands to dig through the dirt. But I know our filthy hands can wash one another's, and not one speck will remain. This act of delving into each other's pasts and pulling up all the terrible deeds and memories is one that our singer believes will actually cleanse them in the end. This idea of getting out all of the bad in order for there to be clarity and cleanliness is one that is popular in things like mental health therapy and treatment. Our singer believes that he and his lover can only truly be clean when they have laid bare all of the dirt in their lives to each other. And I do believe it's true that there are roads left in both of our shoes. I think these lines are hinting at the fact that our singer knows that this current relationship isn't meant to last forever. The idea that they still have separate roads to travel before they end up at their final destination. They know that they aren't truly meant for each other. But if the silence takes you, then I hope it takes me too. Despite the acknowledgement that they still have more to discover in life, our singer hopes that his fate will be tied to his lover's. If they are to sink into despair and silence, then he hopes that the same will happen to him. He cannot let go of her yet, and is maybe resentful of the fact that he knows they will have to part ways at some point. So Brown Eyes, I'll hold you near. This sounds like it is simply a nickname for his lover. Even though he knows they will split up eventually, he still will hold her close at this moment. 'Cause you're the only song I want to hear, a melody softly soaring through my atmosphere. Our singer doesn't want the company of anyone else except his lover. He sees her as a melody in his atmosphere, a sweet song that follows him no matter where he goes. This again can play to the idea discussed in the last song of the folly of pinning so much of your emotional well-being on something that you can't truly control. Our singer is destined for heartbreak. He knows they will have to go their separate ways, but still insists on putting so much of his hope and love into this person. While it is good to love someone, loving someone in place of loving yourself is a bad thing that will lead to more problems down the road. And that is it for Soul Meets Body. I like the song quite a bit. I think it's a pretty standard Death Cab song, all things considered, but I also just really love standard Death Cab songs, so that works for me. This song was the lead single released before the full drop of the album. To me, it's not the strongest track on the album, but it's definitely more radio friendly, so I get why it was used as that lead single. Track 3, Summer Skin. This next song is one that is all about how a relationship falls apart if it isn't given the proper amount of care. Summer is used to describe a relationship that seemed to be so good and happy at the beginning, only to crumble and fade when things got hard. This is often what is referred to as a honeymoon phase of a relationship. The beginning is always filled with so much passion and excitement and romance, only for some of that to give way when life finally starts to set in. Now, this isn't always a bad thing. A good relationship is one that will still remain strong when the world gets in the way, but the relationship that our writer describes was one that couldn't stand the test of time. Squeaky swings and tall grass. Our first images of this summer are two that would be familiar to most people. I know that the images of these two particular things immediately calls to mind the summers that I enjoyed as a child. The hidden meaning behind this is that there are two things that need attention but aren't getting any. A squeaky swing is one that needs to be greased, and the tall grass also needs to be cut. Our singer is talking about these as if they are a good reminder of the summer, but they are really reminders of issues that need to be dealt with before they grow too large. In this way, our singer could see the warning signs during the summer fling, but he chose to ignore them. That is what led to the relationship dying. They only took care to enjoy the positive aspects of the relationship without addressing any of the problems. The longest shadows ever cast. This could be a reference to our singer's strong memories of this particular relationship. This one short romance has cast a long shadow over his life. It's also a reference to the fact that shadows are physically longer during the summer season, given the length of the sunset and the Earth's relative position to the sun. This idea is one that rings true for me personally. I remember getting into my first relationship at 15. It was so inconsequential, and all we really did was just text each other and meet up once a month. We didn't even go to the same school, and I remember being so distraught when that relationship ended, and it haunted me for literal years. Looking back on it, there was no reason that I should have been so broken up over something so small, but it did cast such a long shadow over my life. Luckily, I was able to eventually realize that those feelings were kind of silly, and I gave it up. But if I hadn't, then I could potentially be sitting here 10 years later with the haunting memory of a highly romanticized relationship that really didn't mean anything. The water's warm and children swim. This is another comforting image of the summer. Swimming in a warm pool or lake during the summer months is something that a lot of people can relate to. It's crazy how these first few images presented in the song have taken me back to my own childhood summers. It's a great example of forcing nostalgia through a universal or semi-universal experience. And we frolicked about in our summer skin. This is the metaphor that is used to describe the summer relationship. It was a skin that they wore with each other. This is a great reference to the idea that their love was also only skin deep. Again, it's interesting to think that this relationship impacted our singer so much when he himself can acknowledge how shallow and temporary it actually was. I don't recall a single care, just greenery and humid air. Again, we look at a relationship that wasn't properly cared for. While our singer notes that he didn't have a care in the world when they were together, he also realizes that neither of them really cared about each other. It was a relationship that wasn't tended for by either side. Then Labor Day came and went, and we shed what was left of our summer skin. In the US, Labor Day is a holiday that typically marks the return to school for kids. It is the holiday that unofficially ends the summer for most people. If we were to look a little deeper, we could maybe see this being a relationship that deflated with the birth of a child, that being a literal Labor Day, but I don't think that's what the singer is going for. But again, it could certainly be an interesting angle if that was the case. Just some speculation from my end of things. It is often that the reality of needing to care for a child can cause people to rethink their relationships. Being faced with a shared hardship can cause hesitation if the relationship isn't strong in the first place. We also get the image of shedding skin. This relationship exiting the honeymoon phase and the singer and his lover realizing that they don't care for each other as much as they thought. It also gives us the image of a sunburn peeling from someone's skin, shedding their physical layer of skin now that the summer is over. On the night you left, I came over, and we peeled the freckles from our shoulders. The first line is interesting. It seems that we are looking at a relationship that was brought down by the lover leaving. My guess is that this resulted in the long-distance relationship that we saw covered in Marching Bands of Manhattan. As soon as the reality set in that they were going to be truly separate, they started to peel away their summer skin. Maybe they had convinced themselves that things would be fine while they were away, but they knew that they couldn't truly keep this relationship alive. Our brand new coats were so flushed and pink, and I knew your heart I couldn't win. Now they are raw from removing their summer skin. They had exposed themselves to each other, and now that they could see their relationship without the blinding light of the summer, they knew that it wouldn't work out. Despite this, they seemed to carry on anyway and pretend that they could make things work. 'Cause the season's change was a conduit, and we'd left our love in our summer skin. With the change of the season, a new reality was ushered into their lives, the realization that their love could never last. After the honeymoon phase was over, they both knew that they didn't really care for each other and that the relationship would eventually fizzle out and fade away. One thing that makes these lines hit even harder for me is that Death Cab is a band that was founded near Seattle, Washington. I grew up in Vancouver, Washington before moving away for a while, and now my wife and I live on the Washington coast. Summers here are extraordinarily beautiful. Everything is so green and the weather is perfect, it's really like paradise. This makes the return to fall hit a little harder. It starts to rain again and the sky turns back into a consistent gray. Now, I actually personally love the rain and the dreary skies, but it is a completely different feel from the summer. You can tell that this band feels the same way as they idolize the summer and see the fall as a more dreary experience. I really like this song. It's so sad, and its use of metaphor to paint a picture of a childhood summer is incredibly effective. It got me thinking about all the Washington summers that I experienced as a kid and teenager. Just a good, nostalgic, sad trip for all of us. Track 4, Different Names for the Same Thing. This song is one of my favorites on the album. I love songs that switch things up in the middle, and this song does that so incredibly well. It starts with Ben singing over simple piano chords for the first two verses. The song then introduces electronic elements that feel like they would be more at home on a Postal Service record. Alone on a train, aimless and wander, an outdated map crumpled in my pocket. Our singer starts out on a train, wandering around but with no actual goal in mind. This gives us the image of someone with no purpose in their life. Our singer is unmotivated, and his only reference that he has is an outdated map that provides him with no real guidance. But I didn't care where I was going. They're all different names for the same place. The first verse of this song is all about nihilism, or the idea that nothing matters. Our singer does not care where he is going because he sees everything as more of the same. This is a feeling that those who have been depressed will surely recognize, and it is something that I have struggled with in the past. The feeling that nothing really matters or that nothing even interests you is a terrible one. There is no greater agony, in my opinion, than being unable to find motivation or desire to do anything. I've been in slumps like that for months at a time, and it makes life just so much worse. Our singer is currently in that slump. He is going through the motions, illustrated by his riding the train, but he sees no meaning in his actions. The coast disappeared when the sea drowned the sun. As our singer rides the train, he looks out the window and sees the sun setting over the coastline. There is actually a train that follows the California coast, and this could be a direct reference to Ben Gibbard's experience with that particular train. I knew no words to share it with anyone. The boundaries of language I quietly cursed. This sunset seems to have a great impact on the singer. He looks out at the beauty of the world around him and realizes that he doesn't even have the words to describe what he is seeing. This inability to describe it is something that he is frustrated with, but he also can't help but be in awe of what he is witnessing. Sometimes seeing a sight like this can be enough to pull someone out of their slump. I remember going through a particularly rough period when I was in high school. I was depressed and felt isolated for months despite having a really awesome family and great friends. This slump was broken when I went camping with my friends on Mount Hood, and I was just awestruck by the beauty around me. It might seem silly, but it really did pull me out of that, and I remember a distinct change in my quality of life after that camping trip. Our singer is experiencing this exact experience as he watches the sunset, and it changes his view on the world. And all the different names for the same thing. While before he asserted that everything was the same, now he curses that same assertion. He sees that this view of his life wasn't correct and that there is so much more to experience. It is with this line that the song picks up and starts to feel a lot more upbeat and wondrous. With the last portion of the song, the idea of there being different names for the same thing is celebrated rather than derided. We get the sense that this phrase is now being used to paradoxically describe the idea that you can never truly experience all the world has to offer, and that there was always something greater out there for you. This is the first bit on this album that feels truly positive, and I love it. Like I said, I love the sad Death Cab stuff, but sometimes it's good to get a little light in there as well. I think it is so much more impactful coming from a band that sings about sadness, and is a good way to force listeners who may be commiserating with the band to pick themselves up a little bit. Track 5, I Will Follow You Into the Dark. This is probably the most famous track off of this album, and it totally deserves the hype. It is a beautiful song about love and death and how feelings can transcend everything that might come in its way. I want to read the story of how the song was created directly from Chris Walla, the lead guitarist and producer for Death Cab for Cutie, so here's that. This is his direct quote. We were going to track the vocal for another song, and there was something screwy happening with the headphone mix. We were having problems, so I said, Ben, this is going to be a few minutes, take a break. Ben's version of taking a break while we addressed the headphone problem was to pick up this Stella guitar that he loves and to start playing this song that we were planning on recording sometime later during the sessions. He was still coming through the vocal mic as he was playing this, and it was sounding really cool to me. So I went up and said, let's track this real quick. And we did, and that's what's on the record. It was a mono recording with no effects, nothing. I added a little compression and de-essed it a bit. It's really weird, it's just totally there and happening. So this was a song that Ben had already written, but they felt that they needed to capture it at that particular moment. It's raw and beautiful and one of the easiest Death Cab songs to recommend to anyone who wants to get into the band. Love of mine, someday you will die, but I'll be close behind, I'll follow you into the dark. We start this song with the assertion that everyone will die someday. Despite this being somewhat of a morbid thought, it is presented as something less sad than you would expect. Instead of the song fearing death, it welcomes it and acknowledges that it is merely a part of life that everyone experiences. Our singer says that he will follow his love into the dark. I don't think this is meant to suggest that he will end his own life when his love passes away, but rather that when the time comes for him to die, they will pass into what is next for them together. The idea being that their love is so strong that it will transcend any temporal barrier between them. No blinding lights or tunnels to gates of white, just our hands clasped so tight, waiting for the hint of a spark. Our singer says that there will be no grand vision when they pass away. They won't see the typical images that are associated with moving on, but will rather find comfort in holding each other's hand and waiting for whatever comes for them next. This song in general rejects the idea of any traditional afterlife experience. I don't think this is meant to be atheistic, but rather an acknowledgement that no one knows what will happen after you're gone. Our lovers won't get their heaven or hell, they will find something different after they are gone. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the no's on their vacancy signs. Here we have this idea that neither heaven nor hell will accept the two. This is illustrated by the traditional no vacancy sign that you see on motels when they are all out of open rooms. This idea of the afterlife paints our lovers as outsiders even after their death. Again, this is meant to provide comfort to the two rather than dismay. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. Again, I don't think this is to imply that our singer will end his own life, but rather a reassurance that even if no one else is there to stand by his lover, he will always be there for her. This is a powerful image in the world of the living, but the idea that the very forces of heaven and hell can't keep these two apart is even more impactful. In Catholic school, as vicious as Roman rule, I got my knuckles bruised by a lady in black. Catholic schools are schools that often have nuns who serve as teachers. These schools are known for being incredibly strict and oftentimes antiquated in their punishment methods. This is where the phrase Roman rule comes in. The idea of bruised knuckles comes from the common punishment of beating the hands of children with rulers when they act out of line. It seems that our singer was always one to buck tradition. Maybe it is his views of the afterlife that caused him trouble when he was younger. He never seemed to buy into the typical views of religion and morality that were presented to him in Catholic school, and this caused him to be punished by the nuns. And I held my tongue as she told me, "Son, fear is the heart of love," so I never went back. The nuns taught that fear and love went hand in hand. This goes with the philosophy that some religions teach that a fear of God is essentially the same as a love of God. Our singer disagrees with this idea, however, and holds himself back from speaking up in order to avoid more punishment. It also seems that this disillusion with religion and the afterlife started in this moment. Faced with the idea that love is fear, our singer decides that he would rather abandon that philosophy altogether and find his own path in life. This is why he says he never went back. You and me have seen everything to see, from Bangkok to Calgary, and the soles of your shoes are all worn down. The time for sleep is now. It seems that our pair of lovers have spent their time traveling the earth and experiencing everything they could. They lived a meaningful life full of excitement and traveling and culture, but now it is time for them to lay down and move on to what is next. But it's nothing to cry about, because we'll hold each other soon in the blackest of rooms. This again serves to fortify the idea that has been present throughout the entire song. That moving on from this life doesn't need to be scary if you are doing it with the one that you love. Again, our singer reaffirms his lack of knowledge about what is to come, referring to it as a black room. I don't believe that the singer thinks that there is really nothing after death, just that it really doesn't matter. As long as you are with the one that you love, then you will be able to find paradise wherever you end up. And that is it for I Will Follow You Into the Dark. This song is just so beautiful and sweet and somber, and it captures everything that I love about Death Cab. I love that they ended up going for a completely stripped down vibe instead of doing something more with the production. It fits this song so well. It always gets me a little emotional as well. The song has followed me over the past decade or so, and it's always brought some sort of comfort to me. Just one of my favorite little simple Death Cab songs. Track 6, Your Heart is an Empty Room. Our next song is another one that takes an upbeat tone. Despite that, this song is quite somber. It is all about reflection and catharsis after realizing that a relationship is over. It's about starting over and looking back with a more critical eye. The sound of this song is meant to portray the fact that even though loss can be sad, sometimes tough realizations can be a good thing for you. Burn it down till the embers smoke on the ground, and start anew when your heart is an empty room. Here we have the author talking about what you should do after ending a relationship. He says you should burn all those emotions down, get rid of any part of those feelings that still exist, and start over from scratch completely. This is kind of conflicting advice. While it is good to move on and start over after a relationship goes south, it's not always best to completely burn down everything that you may have learned from it. You need to remember what you may have done wrong or what you disliked in your partner so that you can stop yourself from making the same mistakes over and over again. With walls of the deepest blue. Our new empty room is ready to be decorated with the love of someone else. The walls of this room are described as having a deep blue color. To me, this seems to suggest that while you might be able to forget about most of what happened, there will still be some lingering sadness that has stained itself into your heart. I think that this is true to an extent. I think that we are the sum of all the experiences that we have had, and that heartbreak is an essential human experience. Everyone should experience heartbreak at least once in their life. It's healthy. It's just not good to dwell on those feelings for longer than is healthy. Heartbreak is meant to remind us of the stakes of a relationship. After you suffer from a broken heart, the hope is that you will be a little more measured and a little wiser in your next relationship. It will also hopefully teach you to be delicate with those that you may break up with. You know the pain that you might inflict, so you will hopefully be more gentle when you let someone down. Home's face, how it ages when you're away. These next lines are all about returning to the dating scene after ending a relationship. The dating scene is referred to as home, but this home seems different than it was before. This is healthy. Dating now seems more consequential and mature. You have hopefully learned more about yourself and will be more careful in who you date. And spring blooms, then you find a love that's true. As the seasons change, you find another lover to start a relationship with. Unfortunately, the image of only starting a relationship during the more pleasant months of the year calls back to the same trap that our lovers fell into during summer skin. It seems that our singer is falling back into the same cycle of lovers that has caused him so much trouble up until this point. But now you don't know what to do, because the chase is all you know, and she stopped running months ago. This is something that happens in a lot of relationships, unfortunately. It seems our singer has gotten himself into a new relationship, but is realizing that he really just loved the chase, and that he wasn't really serious about wanting to be committed to someone else. This is something that most people will have to come to terms with in their life. The chase can be thrilling, but it is also heavily romanticized. I used to be guilty of holding this mentality before I got married. The reality is that the grass always seems greener on the other side. Anything you may miss from when you were chasing the person you were with is something that you were frustrated with in that moment. And all you see is where else you could be when you're at home, and out on the street are so many possibilities to not be alone. This is more of the grass is always greener fallacy that we talked about. When you're with someone, there is a temptation to think about someone even better out there that you could be with. This is partially true, but it is another trap that is easy to fall into. The reality is that every great relationship will start with a spark before becoming something like a fire. It might not seem as exciting as it was, but it is more fulfilling. It also needs to be tended to consistently. Trying to chase that spark is a fool's errand because a lasting love that you put effort into is much more satisfying and rewarding than the initial spark. It reminds me of a line on a song from an album that I plan on covering at some point, First Day of My Life by Bright Eyes. That song is all about love, and the singer says, "I would rather be working for a paycheck than waiting to win the lottery." This follows that same line of thinking. Maybe putting in honest work into someone or working for a paycheck is better than waiting around for the perfect someone to come around, as illustrated as waiting to win the lottery. The flames and smoke climbed out of every window and disappeared with everything that you held dear. This is detailing what led up to the empty room that was mentioned at the beginning of the song. The fire came through and destroyed everything that you thought you held dear about yourself and your lover. But you shed not a single tear for the things that you didn't need, because you knew you were finally free. Even though this fire came through your heart, you knew that it was for the best. All of the baggage that you held on from that past relationship was truly just weighing you down, and now you can move on, unburdened from what was. This is reminiscent of the idea of minimalism. That is the philosophy of only owning what you absolutely need and trying to cut down on everything else. It's how people can live fulfilling lives out of a Sprinter van. This song encourages the listener to ditch all of the emotional baggage that they may be holding on to and let your heart be free. Overall, this song is really fun. It is one that brings up a lot of interesting questions and seems to have somewhat of a positive message in the end, despite how gloomy things get in the middle of the song. I love that these songs prompt discussion about love and philosophy and heartbreak. I really enjoy talking about that kind of stuff. Always remember, however, that the advice that I give you is just coming from some random guy on the internet. I'm not a therapist or a psychologist. I'm only speaking from personal experience, so please don't take my ramblings as some sort of absolute truth. Okay, enough of a disclaimer, on to the next song. Track 7, Someday You Will Be Loved. This next song always sounded like some sort of sea shanty to me, and I have absolutely no idea why. I think it's something about the chords that are used at the beginning, but it always puts me in the mood to sail the high seas. Don't ask me why, I don't know. This song is all about our singer ending a relationship with a girl that he knows he can never truly love. It follows a very similar theme to the song Tiny Vessels off of the Death Cab album Transatlanticism that I might end up covering in the future if people end up liking this video. I once knew a girl in the years of my youth with eyes like the summer, all beauty and truth. Here we have our singer talking about a girl that he once dated. It seems that this relationship happened a long time ago. There's a reference to the poem Ode to a Grecian Urn by Keats, which says, "Beauty is truth, truth is beauty." Despite how he may have ended the relationship, our singer still seems to hold a great respect for his former lover. "But in the morning I fled, left a note, and it read, 'Someday you will be loved.'" Our singer decided to leave the relationship with no warning. He couldn't even break up with her face to face and instead left a note. This note is somewhat hopeful. He believes that his ex will find love someday, but it's also hurtful as it implies that he never truly loved her during their relationship. You'll be loved, like you never have known, and the memories of me will seem more like bad dreams." This note seems to imply that while the woman views the relationship positively now, she will someday realize that it wasn't good for the two of them. I go back and forth on whether a singer has noble intentions or not. Maybe he truly believes that he isn't right for her, or maybe even not worthy enough to love her, but maybe he just wants an excuse to move on to something new and exciting. Just a series of blurs, like I never occurred, 'cause someday you will be loved. Death Cab loves to write and sing about memories. The ideas of memories fading and becoming distorted is one that shows up all over their discography. Sometimes this is seen as a positive thing, or a mercy, like in this song. There's a song that we'll talk about later that shares a more negative view of fading memories, however. I cannot pretend that I felt any regret, 'cause each broken heart will eventually mend. It seems that our singer doesn't see a ton wrong with him leaving her, since he knows that she will find someone better for her. I have to say that while I'm glad he's satisfied, leaving a note is such a cowardly way to end things. He should have at least explained his feelings to her face, or tried to work through what wasn't working in the relationship. And as the blood runs red down the needle and thread, someday you will be loved. The image of blood running down a needle is one that is supposed to call to mind the suturing or mending of a wound. We were told that each broken heart will eventually mend, but the bloody image of a heart being sewed back together is one that sounds painful and unpleasant. It seems that our singer knows that he is causing pain, but maybe sees his actions as necessary. You may feel alone when you're falling asleep, and every time tears roll down your cheek, but I know that your heart belongs to someone you've yet to meet, and someday you will be loved. In the end, we have our singer acknowledging the heartbreak that he has caused, but also reassuring them that they will find their true love eventually. While the pain may be bad now, it will be over someday. They could stand to burn their heart down like we talked about in the previous song. I really like this song. I think it does a good job of presenting a narrative without the singer coming off as full of himself. I think the band knows that this method of leaving someone isn't the best solution and doesn't want to present it as such. It's just another song that is truly bittersweet in every sense of the word, like a lot of these songs that we talk about on this album. Track 8, Crooked Teeth. This song is one that is pretty tricky to analyze, and I go back and forth on what I think it is really trying to say. This also makes it a ton of fun to analyze, however. With this song, we get another story of a relationship caving in on itself, a relationship that was never meant to last. Death Cab seems to have found the theme that runs through this entire album. It was 100 degrees as we sat beneath the willow tree, whose tears didn't care, they just hung in the air and refused to fall, to fall. This is a metaphor that seems to have a couple different meanings. We could interpret this as a situation where the couple is in the sweltering heat in need of some sort of relief. The water dripping from the willow tree, or tears as it is referred to, is refusing to fall on them and give them any sort of comfort. This could also be a look at a relationship where each side can't be bothered to get invested. The tears refuse to fall because neither of them are that broken about the current state of their romance. This could also be another classic example of neither one of them being able to admit that the relationship is hopeless and doomed to fail. And I knew I'd made a horrible call, and now the state line felt like the Berlin Wall, and there was no doubt about which side I was on. The Berlin Wall was a literal wall that separated East and West Germany after World War II. East Germany remained a socialist country and struggled economically, while West Germany prospered. The wall was eventually torn down and the country reunited into what we know as Germany today. People were literally forced into a terrible situation by virtue of being physically located a little too far to the east. This is used as a metaphor for our singer feeling trapped in a relationship with no real method of escape. The state line is used as a stand-in for the idea of leaving the relationship for something better. He is stuck in a mess that he can't get out of. 'cause I built you a home in my heart with rotten wood and it decayed from the start. Okay, so I have apparently gotten these lyrics wrong for years. I really thought that the line was rotten wood meant to cave from the start and not it decayed from the start. The meaning is still the same either way. Our singer built a relationship that he knew would crumble away eventually. The melody at this part of the song has always sounded somewhat sinister to me. It reads like he knows that this was a bad thing, but was unable or unwilling to stop himself. He knew that he couldn't really love this woman, but still kept going with the relationship anyways. We can assume that this is the relationship that ended in "someday you will be loved." 'Cause you can't find nothing at all if there was nothing there all along. This chorus is incredibly catchy and one of my favorites. Its meaning is pretty simple. There was never any love in the relationship, so you can't expect to find any in it now. Our singer seems to have led this woman on and is now admitting that he never really cared about her. It's a little too late for that though, and he really should have just said something at the start. I braved treacherous streets and kids strung out on homemade speed, and we shared a bed in which I could not sleep at all. These lines paint the picture of our singer living a former life as some sort of addict in a really sketchy situation. He lived on a street with people addicted to all sorts of synthetic drugs, and he himself was most likely using as well. This is why he couldn't sleep at night. It reads like some sort of withdrawal that he was going through. 'Cause at night, the sun in retreat made the skyline look like crooked teeth in the mouth of a man that was devouring us both. This also reads to me like the visions of a man struggling with some sort of addiction. He sees the sky as a mouthful of crooked teeth that is eating him and his lover. It is a really cool image and stands as an omen for a relationship that was doomed to fail from the start. It speaks to the insignificance that the singer feels about himself and his partner. They are tiny beings to be devoured by a giant. You're so cute when you're slurring your speech, but they're closing the bar and they want us to leave. These lines serve to give us even more of a look at this dysfunctional relationship. Our singer seems to find the most affection for his lover when they are both very drunk. It's almost like he needs to escape reality to find something positive in the woman that he is supposed to be in love with. The couple is also out very late and being kicked out by the owner of the bar. Again, it paints the image of the two of them drinking late into the night to forget their troubles, only to retreat to a house with a bed where the singer is unable to sleep. It's a pretty bleak picture. I'm a war of head versus heart, and it's always this way. The disconnect between one's mind and their feelings is one that is commonly written and sung about by many different artists. I myself wrote a song that deals with this topic. It's a pretty universal experience. The way that it is sung in this song seems to suggest that our singer is tired of leading from the heart and wishes he was more measured and calculating in his actions. My head is weak and my heart always speaks before I know what it will say. This is exactly what got our singer into the position that he is now. He didn't think about what he was doing when he started this relationship, and instead followed the passion and infatuation. Now he is stuck with someone that he can't see himself ever loving. This is a common issue that many people have. Infatuation can seem like everything in the moment, but the real test on whether you want to be with someone is if you still see them as something as magnificent after you've gotten to know them a little better. It is easy to paint an idyllic version of someone that you are initially attracted to and ignore all the red flags. It seems our singer and his partner have done this with each other. There were churches, theme parks, and malls, but there was nothing there all along. This last variation on the chorus is either a rough chronology of their relationship or a simple look at the places they went. It could mean that they were married in a church, had ups and downs like a roller coaster at a theme park, and spent time building a life and settling down, represented as buying things at a mall. It could also be a simple look at all the things that they did in their relationship. They visited all of those places at some point or another. Either way, it was all meaningless and hollow in the end. There was nothing there all along. This song is one that had a surprising amount of depth to it. While the subject matter of most of the songs in this album is very similar, each song always gives us a slightly different view of the situation. I would be curious to know if these songs were meant to describe a single failed relationship or multiple that happened over the course of someone's life. Track 9, What Sarah Said. This is probably the song that I most heavily associate with this album. It was another one that I latched onto very quickly. I play the piano and this song was right at my level when I first heard it, so I quickly learned how to play it. This is another song that talks about love and grief and loss. It is told through the perspective of someone waiting in a hospital to hear the news of their lover's medical condition. I always associated the song with a car crash. I'm not sure why, but it could also be that the lover is suffering from a major illness and is close to death. And it came to me then that every plan is a tiny prayer to Father Time. This is my favorite line on the whole album. It is such a wonderful way to start a song. The use of the first word we hear being "and" throws us directly into a situation that has already been occurring for some time. The thesis of this song and the idea that the name of the album comes from is that every plan that we make is really a wish that we will stay on this earth for a little while longer. Whenever we make plans with someone we love to travel the world, or get married, or even go to dinner the next day, we are subconsciously hoping that nothing will go wrong between now and then. This thought is something that our singer didn't realize until this very moment. He is now faced with the reality that all the plans that he made with his lover will most likely never come to be. He didn't realize that he had been praying to Father Time his whole life. As I stared at my shoes in the ICU that reeked of piss and 409. The ICU is the intensive care unit of a hospital. It is where those in the most critical condition are treated. 409 is a reference to the cleaning product Formula 409. These scents are meant to drive home the seemingly paradoxical nature of the cleanliness and disease of a hospital. Our singer is staring at his shoes in anticipation, which is a common response to stress. I know I personally do that when I am nervous. And I rationed my breaths as I said to myself that I'd already taken too much today. Faced with the impermanence of life, our singer is now getting nervous that he too is living on borrowed time. He feels that every person is only allotted a certain amount of breaths before they die, and thinks that he is already taking too much. Maybe he worries that his life is less precious than the life of his lover that is currently being treated. As each descending peak on the LCD took you a little farther away from me. The LCD screen being mentioned here is most likely a monitor that is recording the vitals of his lover. Each time the person hooked up to the machine breathes or their heart beats, the machine registers it as a wave in a line. As the person inches closer to death, these peaks come further and further apart and eventually flatten out, turning into the flat line that signifies heart failure. Every time the machine registers a drop in any one of these vitals, our singer feels that his lover is being pulled further and further away from him. He knows that things are getting worse for her and is hoping that the vitals will stabilize and stop crashing down. Amongst the vending machines and year-old magazines in a place where we only say goodbye. These are more lines to set the scene of the hospital that our singer and his lover are in. The image of a year-old magazine is one that shows that the primary concern of the hospital is to take care of the patients and not the entertainment of the visitors. This place is also a place where people die, a place where goodbyes are said. It stung like a violent wind that our memories depend on a faulty camera in our minds. This is what I was talking about in my analysis of Someday You Will Be Loved. The idea of memories fading can be seen as a bad thing here. Our memories are not permanent and are subject to being bent and faded by our very human minds. Our singer wishes that he could remember everything as it was and worries that he will forget the time that he has spent with his lover as the years go by after she is gone. And I knew that you were a truth I would rather lose than to have never lain beside it all. This is a really beautiful statement that 13-year-old Davis really resonated with for some reason. It calls back to the saying that it is better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. While losing someone that you love brings a pain that is nearly unbearable, it isn't for nothing. One of my favorite quotes is, "No love is ever wasted. Its value does not lie in its reciprocation." While the sentiment is slightly different here, the idea is the same. The mere act of loving someone is something that changes you for the better. While the pain of missing them is truly devastating, you will always be better for loving them than you would have been if you had locked your emotions away. And I looked around at all the eyes on the ground as the TV entertained itself. Here we see that our singer realizes that he isn't alone. Everyone in that waiting room is doing the same thing as him. They're staring at their shoes just like he said he was in the first verse. The TV plays in the corner to no one because nobody is looking for entertainment. They're all too nervous and anxious to find any levity in the situation. Because there's no comfort in the waiting room, just nervous paces bracing for bad news. Another image of the waiting room in the ICU, a room where no one is still and where no one is calm. It is a place where everyone is bracing themselves for the worst possible outcome. And then the nurse comes round and everyone lifts their head, but I'm thinking of what Sarah said. The sign of the nurse entering the room typically means that something has happened with the patient. Sometimes it means that they are in a stable condition, but it often means that they have passed away. Even though the nurse has entered the room, our singer is thinking of something that his friend or lover, someone named Sarah, once said to him. That love is watching someone die. Watching the person that you love pass away is probably the most heartbreaking experience that anyone can go through. Just thinking about it as my wife sleeps in the room next to me as I write and record this is enough to make me emotional. In a way, it is the truest form of love, however. It means that you have been with that person through everything and are there with them until the very end. So who's gonna watch you die? The end of the song repeats this simple question. Who do we really love and who really loves us? If we have someone in our lives that will remain with us until the very end, then things will be alright. A love like that is worth more than anything else and can carry you a long way. This song is really beautiful and haunting. It sets the scene very well, and I have such a vivid image in my mind about what is happening whenever I listen to it. It is one of my favorites, but I honestly avoid listening to it a lot because I don't want to become an emotional wreck. But whenever I do want to connect with some of my inner sadness, the song always does the trick. Track 10, Brothers on a Hotel Bed. I'm starting to sound like a broken record at this point, but this is another one of my favorite songs in this album. The beginning piano section sets the scene so well, and I love Death Cab songs that have extended intros. They have a song called I Will Possess Your Heart that has a super long intro, and I love it. This song is a tonal shift away from what Sarah said. While that song was all about love and loss and the heartbreak of moving on, this song is all about a relationship that has grown stale and vapid over the years. It is a song about an old couple that don't quite have the spark that they once had. You may tire of me as our December sun is setting, 'cause I'm not who I used to be. Here we have our singer admitting that his lover must be growing tired of him. The use of the term December sun is meant to illustrate the lack of warmth in the relationship, but also the old age of this particular couple. As the last month of the year, December often symbolizes the last period of someone's life before death. No longer easy on the eyes, but these wrinkles masterfully disguise the youthful boy below. While our singer is old and gray, he still feels young at heart. He knows that under all those wrinkles is the same young boy who once fell in love with his disinterested partner. He seems to feel somewhat disconnected to his current appearance, calling it a disguise. Who turned your way and saw something he was not looking for, both a beginning and an end. When the singer was young, he saw his lover for the first time and was immediately taken by her. He saw the rush of their short-term romance, but also knew that they could spend the rest of their lives together. He saw the beginning of their romance and what he pictured the end of their romance and their life together would look like. But now he lives inside someone he does not recognize when he catches his reflection on accident. Like we discussed before, our narrator does not identify with the way that he currently looks and feels. It is also notable that he only sees this when he looks in the mirror by accident. This paints the picture of someone who is actively avoiding looking at themselves in the mirror because they are ashamed of what they have become. On the back of a motorbike, with your arms outstretched, trying to take flight, leaving everything behind. These lines seem to be a look back at their relationship when they were young and carefree. They found each other and ran away from everything in their lives that was holding them down. The image of a couple on a motorcycle traveling the world is one that would certainly be exciting to most people. It serves to show just how drab and boring the narrator thinks his life is now. But even at our swiftest speed, we couldn't break from the concrete in the city where we still reside. It seems that even though the couple tried to be adventurous and successful in their lives, they were ultimately tied down to the city that they met each other in. They wanted to get out and find something new, but they were unable to take flight and ended up staying in the place that they had always known. I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. Neither of us moved a lot growing up. My wife grew up in Colorado and I grew up in Washington. After graduating high school, we both took trips abroad before going to school out of state and then eventually moving back to Washington where we live now. We both found the process of leaving home and attending college out of state to be pretty impactful. I personally love that I was able to experience life somewhere else before realizing definitively that Washington is the best place on the planet. Now we live a couple hours away from where I grew up, actually. I don't know how I would feel if I stayed in my hometown for my entire life. Maybe I just don't understand that perspective though, and it's actually pretty sweet. If you're someone who has grown to adulthood while living in your hometown your entire life, then let me know what you think. Maybe the picture that is being painted in this song isn't entirely accurate. Maybe it's actually a pretty sweet thing to do. And I have learned that even landlocked lovers yearn for the sea like Navy men. This is an interesting simile that uses the sea as a representation for love. Everyone wishes they were at sea, those who have never been there and those who spend their entire lives on it. In the same way, our narrator is saying that everyone yearns for love. Those that have never felt it, but also those that are in relationships. This cold, dead romance isn't enough for our narrator. He wants something more. 'Cause now we say goodbye from our own separate sides, like brothers on a hotel bed. This is the final simile that is used in this song, and it is perfect. Our narrator and his lover sleep separate from each other, but still on the same bed, as if to illustrate that while it may seem like they're in love, there is no passion in their romance. As someone who has slept in a hotel bed with my brother, I can attest that you try to stay as far away as possible from them while you are sleeping. You each retreat to your own separate sides of the bed so as you don't touch each other by accident. This is how our narrator describes his current situation with his lover. They share a bed but stay far away from each other. Like I said, this is one of my favorite songs on this album, and it's one of the Death Cab songs that I regularly listen to. Something about it is so melancholy, but it also has such a good groove to it, and it's hard for me not to sing along. Track 11, Stable Song. The last song on this album is one that could only be at the end of the album. It is a great way to send us off into the night after the full experience of listening to Plans. The lyrics of this one are cryptic, and there isn't much that has been said about them, so I'll try to do my best to interpret them, and if you think that I'm way off base, then you can let me know in the comments. Time for the final bout. I thought this lyric was final bow for the longest time, but this makes more sense. This song is about growing up and becoming your own person, almost as if our narrator is realizing that he has spent the better part of an hour singing about lost loves, and now needs to move on and try to again find love. This new attempt to make something of himself and find love is the final bout, his final struggle before either finding happiness or giving up completely. He seems to be unsure of where things are going, but he continues on regardless. Rows of deserted houses, all our stablemates highway bound. This image of deserted houses and all the narrator's stablemates having left is to show us that it is now his time to move on. Everyone else in his life has grown up and made something of themselves, and now he needs to do the same. There is no use living among the deserted houses by himself anymore. Give us our measly sum. Here we have the pessimistic view of love that our narrator has. He sees the act of leaving home and trying to make something of himself as something sad, almost like he is an impoverished person waiting in a bread line or counting their tiny paychecks that don't cover all of the bills. This measly sum is all he thinks he can find. Getting the air inside my lungs is heavenly starting out. As he sets out on the road, he starts to feel good about himself. He is realizing that spreading his wings and making something of himself is something that makes him feel good. He feels like he can finally breathe the fresh air and wonders if this is what has been missing out on his entire life. With nothing but crippling doubt. Even though he seems to receive some positive feelings from setting out, he's still nervous and pessimistic at heart. He wants to believe that this time he can find love and settle down, but he still doubts that this can never happen. Given everything that this album has talked about in relation to how our narrator views love, it's hard to blame him for this way of thinking. We'll rest easy, justified. These lines really call back to something that I'm very familiar with, the idea of feeling like you've earned your rest at the end of the day. I struggle with ADHD and some depression. This can lead me to being incredibly lazy for long periods of time. When I spend my days sitting around, I find myself restless at night when I'm trying to sleep because I didn't use any energy during the day. To me, the feeling of knowing that you have earned your rest at the end of the day is incredible. I love being productive and wearing myself out only to sink into bed and fall asleep quickly. I think our narrator is implying that his rest now feels easy and justified because he is finally putting in the work to find a lasting love and make something more of himself. Suffered a swift defeat, I'll endure countless repeats. Like anyone, our narrator has run into a setback in his journey. Maybe he was rejected by someone or fell into his old ways. The road that he is on is one that is tough to walk. He will suffer many setbacks as he tries to find love and happiness. He will learn to keep going until he finds what he is looking for. The gift of memory is an awful curse. With age, it just gets much worse. There are a couple things going on in these lines. The first being the paradox of memory being both a gift and a curse. As you grow older, you will surely gain more memories, but you will also have a harder time recalling them. In this way, your memory can feel more like a curse at times. The accumulation of memories also means that you have more things that can come back to haunt you. This is a theme in a lot of Death Cab music, and it certainly rings true here. Our narrator is getting nervous that he won't be able to move past everything that has hurt him before, and wonders if he is getting too old to find true love. But I won't mind, I won't mind. Our last lines of the album are somewhat optimistic. Even though there is so much that he could worry about, the narrator decides to shrug it all off and continue forward anyway. All of these memories have made him who he is, and to abandon all of those things would be to completely lose himself. He knows who he is, and that there is someone out there who will love him for every fault and flaw that he has. This is what we are left with at the end of the album, something that is hard to come by in most Death Cab for Cutie's music, but something that is sorely needed. Hope. And that is going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is the first video of mine that is covering an album that isn't by The Deer Hunter, and I had a ton of fun with it. If this is your first time watching, then please subscribe if you liked the video. These take a lot of effort and time to make, and I just do them on the side as a passion project. I don't make any money from it, I just do it because, I don't know, it's cool and interesting to me. Thank you guys for all of the support. I'm slowly inching my way towards 1,000 subscribers, which would be an absolute dream. I never thought this channel would pass like 100, so it's been incredibly gratifying to see the growth, and I owe all of that to you guys. Thank you so much again, and I'll be back with another album deep dive pretty soon, so just look out for that. If you like this video, then please like the video, and then let me know what albums you would like me to cover in the future. I'm open to suggestions. I have a couple that I want to cover, but if you like this Death Cab breakdown, then I'd love to do like Transatlanticism or even Asphalt Meadows, their most recent albums. So just let me know what you want, and I'll be sure to cover it. See you guys later. See ya.